Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So in today's video I'm going to do something a little bit more laid back. I'm just going to let the footage in the background play whilst I give you my final thoughts or closing thoughts on GT7 update 1.42. So by the time this video releases, it's probably been about a week and a half since update 1.42, and I feel like I've had enough time in the sort of world of GT7 to give some decent final thoughts and kind of touch on some of the more, I guess, controversial points of this update. And well, if we're going to talk about it, we need to go all the way back to the silhouette releases. So obviously the silhouettes, as usual, get released by Kaz on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's always going to be Twitter, and basically it's all about us speculating what's coming. Now the majority of the time these are super simple to guess, and this time around it was even easier than ever. In fact, two of the silhouettes straight away we already knew as the, well, VGT cards. These are the ones that were kind of shown off at the World Finals, all to do with the 10th anniversary. We had the Genesis X, which was a viewers campaign reward car. Then we also had the Bulgari VGT, which was kind of a collaboration around a watch and stuff like that. More on that later on. And then we did have one final one, which was a bit of a mystery and nobody really knew about, but just from the shape and the obvious look of it, you could tell it was the Japanese version of the Suzuki Jimny, the narrow body, K car, straight out of Japan, a fairly cool and quirky little car. However, to be honest, most of these cars were just never asked for and not really wanted, and I feel like it's very much a situation where, already talked about cars are being hidden behind silhouettes for almost no reason at all. We had the same thing when the Ferrari VGT came in the December 22 update, where it was kind of hidden behind a silhouette, but it's like we already knew we were getting it, considering it was a early access viewers campaign gift reward. And yeah, I think here seeing two of them at once and only one, I guess, car after almost, I guess, what, 2.5 months after the last update just felt very, very rubbish, to be totally honest. However, coming off the back of the biggest GT7 update ever in November 1.40 or Spec 2, I didn't have high expectations for this update. I mean, let's be totally honest, we had the whole Christmas period in between. I honestly thought that, if we do get an update in January, unlike January 23, then we're doing decent. However, I did not expect it to be this bad, I'll be totally honest. Hopefully the only way is up from here, but let's go back to the cars themselves. So we already knew what was coming, and I think now it's time to touch on probably the most controversial car in recent memory for GT7, the Bulgari VGT. Now we all knew that the early access for the Genesis was going to be in January. That's how it was advertised. If you took part in the viewers campaign, you'd get that car early before it was buyable for the rest of GT7, or maybe the new players at Christmas and stuff a little bit later down the line. It seems like that was backpedaled at the last minute, and that car became available to everyone, including people that didn't take part in the viewers campaign. They could just go ahead and buy it. Don't get me wrong, it's a VGT and it's fairly boring overall, but it is still a free vehicle and a vehicle nonetheless. It seemed that at the last minute it turned around to be the Bulgari that had the early access. However, that car was hidden behind a £4,500 paywall for a month, which just doesn't sit right to me. If you're advertising a car is coming with an update, you better make sure that car's there for everybody, not just hidden behind some silly little, I guess, watch or whatever you want to call it for £4,500 and then limiting it for an extra month behind that paywall, meaning that a very minute amount of players probably have their hands on it legitimately. So yeah, it doesn't really feel too good, and it feels very much against the player. In terms of the viewers campaign rewards that go into early access, it makes more sense. The entire thing around those is to get the car on show, obviously show it off at the World Finals, and give players a reason to watch the World Finals as well. If you know you're going to get rewarded for the sake of a couple of seconds, you then have early access to the car. So yeah, it feels less bad in terms of that way of doing it. However, doing it in the way of, completely hiding it behind a ridiculous paywall, behind a product that very few players probably even want, it's just, yeah, rather ridiculous and just doesn't sit right with me. For me, very controversial way of doing it, and advertising it as coming with 1.42 but actually not being available to many players at all just really doesn't feel good. So my final thoughts on the cars: the Jimny was pretty cool, very versatile, can pretty much do everything in the game, but very underpowered even with max upgrades, meaning that its use is very limited outside some of the shorter events in the game. The Genesis X actually proved to be a fairly decent grinding car, so that was quite surprising overall, but definitely not the best or most wanted car in the world. And then obviously the Bulgari, well, probably about 5 people will be able to tell you how good that car is. I will obviously continue my reviews for that one at the end of February when that car comes in, but overall not a great selection of cars, and there is tons of vehicles missing that we would probably like. You know, the one that shocks me really is the new GT500 machinery not being available in GT7, considering that most of it's been out for over 2 years, and they've got the likes of the Honda Civic GT500 coming in, and it's just not available yet. That is one of the pinnacles of Japanese motorsport, so whoever's pulling the strings in the background of what can and can't be a car in GT7 probably isn't Polyphony, it's probably Sony themselves. Hopefully they kind of get their act together and stop bringing these cars in. There's a ton of people wanting them in the game, and it makes sense. You know, it's a Japanese form of motorsport. Get them in the game. It's a Japanese game. It totally makes sense, and it bulks up a very limited class already, considering Group 2 doesn't really feature that much in terms of vehicles. So yeah, we'll definitely love to see things like that coming in, as well as the likes of updated Group 3s and such, but we'll probably see them come GT8 at this point in time. However, if there was one saving grace from update 1.42 that is vehicle related at least, would be the engine swaps. There was 10 of them this time around, so it does seem like the numbers getting upped by the updates. We had a ton in 1.40, we've got an extra 10 now in 1.42, some fantastic swaps in there, some absolutely ridiculous ones as well, like the LFA engine in an Alphard and such. So overall these were very, very good, and definitely made those pre-existing cars just that much more interesting. Hopefully Polyphony continue this trend and don't go back to the typical, you know, 3 to 5 an update. Keep pumping them out at 10 an update. These are absolutely brilliant, and perhaps the standout thing of update 1.42. So absolutely would love to see more of these. Now next we're going to kind of move on to the escapes. To be honest, this is a totally pointless feature. It does get advertised as like a key update thing, so I guess in a sense I have to talk about them. We obviously had a new location, which was just boring, to be totally honest. There was really nothing there interesting. I think we've only had, in terms of post-launch ones, a very few interesting locations, which is a shame. Don't get me wrong, I love Scapes for the fact of taking some pretty cool race pictures, you know, some fairly cool pictures, some cars I've got customized, but the locations post-launch have been typically terrible. And then we also had the vertical one as well, which, let's be honest, you know, if you want a wallpaper of a car that you've got in GT7, just go ahead and search it on Google or something. You know, there is a real version of that car out there, and to be honest, just thought of putting 2 vertical black lines on my car overall just doesn't quite sit right with me, and it was just terrible anyway. So Scapes, not bothered. Just bring something interesting if you're going to advertise them as a key part of an update. Okay, so finally let's talk about events and obviously the, I guess, menu book. Now for me, menu books seem to become a bit of a rarity. It seemed like when the game first launched, you'd always get a menu book, and then I'd say from sort of the early part of 2023 these sort of got phased out for just normal events put in there. So to see another one was a bit surprising, surrounding the obviously Jimny and such, called the Jimny Cup. Now, I actually thought this was a fantastic menu book overall. It was just far too short, to be totally honest. This was a very versatile menu book that actually showed off the Jimny's potential. We had snow, dirt, tarmac, but the events that they were put in were like 3 to 5 minutes long. It almost seems absolutely pointless. So, you know, a total of around about 10 minutes and you're done with the menu book really just felt like a kick in the teeth, considering the rest of the update was fairly terrible apart from their engine swaps. In terms of the other 2 events, again, they were just boring. They're in addition to a previous menu book, the VGT trophy. Again, not great. I get why they're there, but putting 2 in, yeah, they were just typically short sprints. So overall, in terms of the events, not a fan either. This was perhaps the weakest bunch of events we've had in a very long time, and that's saying something. So I guess another part of the update that I have to really talk about is glitches and money things. I guess this is a key point of an update to many people. Whilst the events themselves didn't really change up and no real new glitches or anything came out, there actually was one in the sense of a, I guess, repeating car. So if you didn't know, the whole livery situation got completely bugged out on the Genesis X. They redistributed a free one, so people will have at least 2 that took part in the viewers campaign. However, there's kind of reports that people are getting one almost every day they log in, meaning that they're getting 500k every single day just for accepting the gift reward and then selling it on. So I guess there is that. It didn't happen to me personally, but there's plenty of people saying that pretty much every time they've logged in since the second one was handed out, they've had another ticket repeating itself, which kind of harks back to the whole ticket glitch days with the NSX and such from like mid 2022. So yeah, there is that. And I guess the other method that I need to talk about is the Genesis X being actually a fairly decent grinding car, which did surprise me considering its very limited ability for customization and such. So there is those two. I guess they add a bit of value. One's kind of, I mean, pure chance and luck. The other one though, yeah, it does make use of a free vehicle, so it's just constant profit. So I guess there is that, but there's really nothing else new to talk about on that front either. So overall, was update 1.42 the worst update in GT7 history? I would absolutely say yes. It was a very poor update. Don't get me wrong, I didn't expect much with it being January and the Christmas period and off the back of Spec 2, but I didn't expect it to be this bad either. Hopefully the only way is up from here and we're getting like the really poor update out the way for the year very early on, which would be a good thing. But to be honest, I could see this being a repeating trend. Look, Polyphony and Kaz themselves aren't going to be able to, I guess, satisfy every single player out there with every single car you wish. You know, that's why I kind of don't like the whole car beggars that go on to be like, we need this, we need that. But definitely in terms of some of those like GT500 cars and, you know, updating the GT3s at this point should absolutely be a priority. You know, we've had enough of the absolute terrible cars coming to the game, and this felt like the biggest kick in the teeth possible. You know, turn away from the VGT program, in my opinion. It's had its decade out there. Let's move on to something new. Update 1.42, pretty weak. Hopefully it can only get better from here. Take care, guys. Peace.